Despite the types of videos I make, RPGs was something I wasn't a big fan of growing up. But recently, I've been starting to understand why it is one of the most beloved genres in the industry, with certain games convincing me of their greatness, one of the most notable being Xenoblade Chronicles, undeniably one of the most unique, engaging and downright incredible video games I've ever played. A true masterpiece if I ever saw one. I even made a video explaining why. This game is comprised of so many fantastical elements. In particular, the party members are what I feel to be one of, if not the strongest aspects, being some of the most lovable and extraordinary people I've had the pleasure of getting to know and use in battle. But that begs the question of which of them are the very best, and truth be told, I believe only having one perspective isn't going to do this game justice, so I'm gonna need someone to back me up. But at the same time, I'm not sure who to collab with and— INCOMING! What the—
Another landing, perfectly executed.
Ugh, this is your idea of perfect?
Precisely. Would you expect anything less from me?
Wonderful. But, who exactly are you?
Dude, it's me, Zane. You know, the TheKingBahamut, the guy who helps run the chat in your live streams? I was featured on episodes of your Fire Emblem 7 Let's Play. We did that whole discussion about Fire Emblem Echoes.
Doesn't ring a bell.
I'm the guy who's constantly complaining about Fire Emblem Heroes on Twitter.
Oh yeah, I remember you. Actually, now that you're here, I'm in the process of doing a Xenoblade Chronicles countdown and need a collab partner. Care to join me?
Ooh, Xenoblade. I'm always down to talk about that game. Heck, I love it so much that even though I've only played it through once, it's already in my top 5 favorite games of all time, maybe even top 3. Everything about it is simply superb, and I could spend hours upon hours gushing over every aspect of the game. But alas, you are not Crash X500 anymore, so we can't make this video unnecessarily long. Instead, I believe it's in our best interest to focus on one of the most important aspects of any RPG, the characters. Specifically, the 7 lovable goofballs who make up the playable cast.
Now when it comes to how we'll be judging each character, it'll be a combination of how they're written as well as how useful we found each of them to be in battle. But I'd like to make it clear that this is all based on our personal experience, and we feel there really isn't any character in the game that is bad or straight up useless, just some that were more useful to us than others or better written.
Also, we can't really talk about these characters in detail without addressing some massive spoilers for the plot of the game, so I'd recommend not watching this video if you don't want the story spoiled.
And with all that cleared up, let's say we take a look at the 7 superstars that are at the center of one of the greatest RPGs of our time. But before we go any further, Zane, you're gonna need a makeover.
Really? But I have sentimental attachment to this avatar. I made it myself using pre-existing assets made by someone else.
That's cool and all, but wouldn't you rather have a wider range of expressions? It worked wonders for this lot.
You know what? I'm game. Let me see what you can do.
So, what do you think?
I'm really feeling it.
Sharla. Video games that utilize some sort of class system usually make it so that the healers are some of, if not the most useful party members in the game, so we find it rather ironic that Sharla ended up at rock bottom.
In my opinion, I think Sharla is the overall least useful of the 7 playable characters in the game. Now that doesn't mean she's bad, far from it. To us there isn't a single bad character in the game, but out of the entire group we felt like she was the one who has the fewest amount of situations where she's particularly useful, despite her role as the medic. Just goes to show that Xenoblade ain't your typical JRPG.
Being the first new party member Shulk and Ryan run into, Sharla enters the scene with quite a lot going for her, coming off as someone who is strong, bold, and takes shit from no one, yet also being very considerate of others and an exceptionally wise and calm figure that keeps the team in check. Oh boy, I'm getting Fire Emblem flashbacks again.
As a character, we find Sharla to be rather middle of the road. I mean, there's definitely a lot we like about her, but compared to everyone else, I wouldn't say she stands out that much, though she does have her moments. For what it's worth, I really approve of how she's written as a strong-willed female character without falling into the stereotypical tough female soldier trope, which is highlighted by her really good design. I also admire how Sharla acts as a supportive and caring friend to the rest of the party. She's the sort of person who is there for the people she cares about, always willing to lend an ear to their troubles and give them advice in turn.
In regards to the big picture, we felt Sharla didn't really do that much or even speak up to the extent of all the other characters, so we found her to be slightly forgettable. Granted, she starts having more relevance towards the tail end of the game, in addition to some really good conversations with Melia and Ryan, but sadly we feel this isn't enough to keep up with everyone else, especially when she takes to the field of battle.
Sharla's main problem isn't her move pool or stats, but rather her playstyle clashing with game mechanics. You see, in Xenoblade Chronicles, your characters are automatically restored to full health at the end of every battle. As a standalone mechanic, it's pretty great. But it does have the unfortunate effect of kneecapping Sharla's role in the game somewhat, since once her main perk is taken away, her remaining options don't do much to salvage her potency.
Being a support type character, Sharla naturally doesn't have much in the way of offensive arts to help take down enemies, and though some moves like Thunder Bullet and Headshot are quite good, they pale in comparison to other team members' output, which is a big factor in Xenoblade as the battles are considerably shorter, more frantic and fast paced than most RPGs, with an emphasis on constant DPS rather than long-term sustainability. That's not to say she straight up sucks, we both found her to be great starting out and during boss fights, where you can't just overpower the enemy in seconds, though if you are going to have Sharla on the team, we advise taking control of her personally, as Sharla's AI sucks at maintaining the heat gauge.
The reason we bring this up is that for every art that Sharla uses, she builds up her talent gauge, and when it's full, she'll be unable to move for a short period of time. Now you can use certain gems to decrease this effect, as well as let out heat when the meter isn't full to speed up the process, but the AI often forgets to do this, leaving her as a sitting duck more times than we're comfortable with. Even though we've been rather negative this entire time, we really don't hate Sharla. In fact, I'd be perfectly happy to say more nice things about her. It's just unfortunate that while she's completely serviceable as a character and party member, her opposition has a tendency to do everything better. Though on a lighter note, while she is in last place on the list, she is still a Xenoblade character. And the worst of Xenoblade is still miles better than the best of, say, Final Fantasy XIII.
We don't talk about that game! Riki. Yes, even the Xenoblade series needs a cute and cuddly mascot, and for the love of God we can't seem to escape them, with the Heropon Riki being the OG Nopon representative, though I'm convinced he's there just in case the group gets hungry. The characters in X couldn't resist the temptation after all.
Yeah, and that got annoying after the first 5 minutes. Now, while I personally liked Riki from day one, Mr. BLAZINGKNIGHT had the same reaction to the furball as a certain silver-haired maiden. Though, like said maiden, over time I was able to convince him that there is merit to this Nopon. Though, truth be told, I'm a little surprised he needed convincing in the first place.
Why's that?
Isn't it obvious?
He's so fucking cute! Oh my god, the Nopon are basically giant hamsters with rabbit ears and kitty cat faces. How can you not just want to run up to them and give them a big old hug? Look at Ricky's little kitty face when he's happy. Oh my god, I just want to eat him up. I just want to cuddle him.
And here I thought I went crazy over cute things. On the surface, Riki is a bit of a loser, being really egotistical without having any real skills to back it up, a voice that's rather annoying at first, and just coming off as a character who doesn't seem like someone who could be of any use to Shulk and company. But when delving deeper, we found this little guy to be surprisingly enduring. For one, his attitude is more of a way of keeping himself and the other team member spirits enriched, as he's well aware that he kinda sucks, but doesn't let that get him down, and his demeanor helps to keep everyone from becoming too glum or discouraged.
In addition to his comedy, his interactions with Ryan in particular being the stuff of legend, there's also his role as a father, which ended up being considerably interesting. He repeatedly gave surprisingly thoughtful advice to the other characters throughout the game, to the point where even Dunban was astounded at how wise the little puffball can be. His profound yet simple-minded philosophy made for some very touching moments, showing how sometimes what makes a character good isn't how deep or complex they are, but rather their charm and likability. Plus it helps that for someone so small, he can hold his own in a fight. Riki in battle is an interesting case. He's meant to be a jack-of-all-trades character, the kind that can do a little bit of everything without really specializing in one particular area. Normally, these types of characters aren't too useful in RPGs, as they end up being outclassed by other party members that can do certain jobs much better than they can. However, Riki has several perks that allow him to remain useful in spite of his lack of specialization, and is overall very flexible and a pretty reliable fighter. Because you'll only have 3 characters in your party at any given time, Riki's ability to fulfill multiple roles means that there won't be a situation where he isn't useful. I find he's especially good against enemies that are weak to ether attacks, since he can use arts like Burninate, Freezinate, and Lurgy, and then finish them off with his Caesari attack. Not to mention his most useful art, Happy Happy, which refills the party gauge so long as he has high tension, allowing you more chain attacks, vision warnings, and revives.
As you can see, Riki can fit into just about any team composition and still do rather well. Wants a character to dump status elements all over an enemy? Riki can do that. Need someone to tank hits? Leave it to Hitopon. Require a healer but would rather not use Sharla? Riki has you covered. There really is nothing this little guy can't do. And while it's all well and good, at the same time, Riki often lacks the stats needed to be potent as other members of the team when it comes to specific roles, and as such, I personally didn't feel the need to use him very often, as I preferred to have a party of specialists that could really bring the pain, but that's ultimately more to do with personal preference. We're also not particularly fond of playing as him, for his playstyle mostly consists of just spam arts constantly, which is great for AI controlled characters, but doesn't exactly make for very interesting gameplay in our opinion. First impressions can figuratively make or break a character, and in Riki's case, he didn't get off to the best start, but after hearing Zane out and giving him a second chance, he really did become a true hero pawn both in and out of battle, but I still think he'd make for a delicious stew.
Oh, you fuck.
Melia. I imagine this may rub people the wrong way, since Melia is one of the most beloved characters in the franchise, and for what it's worth, Melia is one of my favourites. However, Zane doesn't exactly feel the same way, so we had to come to a compromise. Though if you want to throw bricks at his window, be my guest.
Gee, thanks. I'm going to be honest, Melia is my least favorite character in the game. Well, at least in terms of writing. Again, she's by no means bad, but when taking into account everyone else, she's the one who made the least amount of impact on me. I know this is an unpopular opinion, but I can't help it. Everyone seems to love her, but I just find her to be meh, Leah.
That was so forced.
Oh, don't judge me, you've done worse.
Melia has arguably the most important debut into the story of Xenoblade Chronicles, as everything that goes on during her arc has possibly the largest bearing on the overarching story, and it's here where a lot of world building and history is revealed about this universe. So for a while, it felt like she became the main character of the game, and for what it's worth, I thought she made for a damn good one. Melia is very much a strong yet resilient princess, but what she goes through in her evolution is what I admire most about her, as she has to deal with a lot of shit and starts out as more of a figurehead rather than a leader. But over time, and thanks to Shulk and the others, she understands her role in life and continuously contributes to leading the group and rallying people together thereon after.
Well, that's certainly quite the strong resume, but I'm still not impressed. And I think the biggest reason that I'm not impressed is that I just don't find her to have as strong a personality as the other characters. Now, to be fair, I understand that her more reserved nature is more than likely intentional, and it can be a nice change of pace considering how over the top some of the other party members can get. However, I'm much more partial to characters that have very audacious and bold personalities. And in Xenoblade, characters like Ryan and Riki, who have very big personas, were the ones I felt to be far more engaging. And that's not to say that Melia doesn't have her great moments. I really like her conversations with Sharla, she plays off Ryan pretty well, and her heart-to-hearts with Riki are actually quite touching. But overall, she felt more like a standard prim and proper princess character, which isn't a problem in and of itself, but I've seen this trope done before and done better in other stories.
Speaking of being done before, I noticed that Melia is also more traditional when it comes to playstyle. Melia assumes the role of the standard mage archetype, having a wide assortment of magical abilities that make her quite resourceful, and has access to some incredibly powerful arts that can wreck the enemy like nothing else. I'm not joking, Melia can be an utter powerhouse in the right hands, as her ether attacks often deal more damage to enemies, and she can injure everyone at once. And when her talent gauge is full, she'll enter elemental burst mode, where her attacks do more damage, and is able to use even more arts that tend to be her best moves. So if you know how to make the best out of Melia, she can be downright disgusting with how hard she'll nuke the enemies, and is an absolute beast during chain attacks.
Yeah, but only if you play as her, because Melia's AI is complete crap. Xenoblade's AI-controlled characters are known for having a modus operandi that consists of spam arts constantly no matter what. Now, this isn't a bad thing depending on the character, but for someone like Melia, who has a very precise playstyle where arts have to be used in a certain order and with good timing, you're better off with literally anyone else.
Being forced into controlling her when engaged in a fight regrettably leads into Melia's biggest problem. Playing as her is repetitive. I mean, to be fair, Xenoblade's combat system has a degree of repetitiveness in nature, and being able to help allies and use their super arts is cool and very effective. but at the same time the remaining party members are far more active with their arts and positioning, in addition to connecting attacks together in order to stack effects and cripple enemies. Melia's playstyle feels a lot slower and just a bit boring to us, as it's more about standing still and timing your moves rather than getting caught up in the heat of the action. It seems excitement was not part of her job description.
I don't want to be too harsh on Melia. Ultimately, I do like her, I just think that she gets way more credit than she deserves for the wrong reasons. However, there's no denying the fact that she's a strong woman and a force to be reckoned with in battle. And, you know what? I'd say that's good enough to make her a good character in my book.
And the best Xenoblade girl in mine.
Sorry dude, but I'm gonna have to completely disagree with you on that.
Funny, that means you're disagreeing with most of the fanbase too.
I'll shut up now.
Rein. Of course it would be Rein time at some point. Next to Melia, he's probably the most beloved character in Xenoblade, and it doesn't take a genius to figure out why. Rein is such a brilliant buffoon whose every line of dialogue would put even Owain to shame, and despite how much he likes to talk the talk, he can just as easily walk the walk, as well as being a surprisingly well written and developed character too.
That's precisely why I friggin' love this guy. Not only is Rein one of my favorite characters in the game, he's one of my favorite characters in any video game, or hell, even in media in general. And he's definitely one of the best examples of the best friend archetype in fiction.
Rein at face value is very much the comic relief best friend stereotype we've seen a million times before, being full of himself and very impulsive, as well as a slight dunderhead, which tends to become grating 98% of the time. However, we both agree that Rein is feasibly the greatest version of this trope to date, and makes everyone else look like a bunch of jokers.
This big guy is willing to follow Shulk all the way across the Bionis no matter what, helping him fight against and stand up to all the danger that comes with it. The two of them have one of the most genuine friendships I've ever seen, largely due to how Rein pushes Shulk forward and helps him grow as a person. Rein knows Shulk and often encourages him to open up and talk about his problems with others, while Shulk acts as ballast for Rein and helps curb his impulses. Also, side note, Rein's English voice actor is simply wonderful. All of the voice acting in Xenoblade is excellent in my opinion, but Rein's VA in particular is really good at delivering his lines in a way that ensures maximum comedic effect.
Doing a spot of maintenance?
I don't know if it's his thick Cockney accent or the half-jesting tone, but for some reason that line just cracks me up.
I can't imagine anyone being more perfect for the role. But going back to how Shulk keeps Rein in check, this actually plays a big part in regards to his character development, as he begins to question his importance to Shulk now that his best friend has become so much stronger than Rein can ever be. But it's the love that he has for him that motivates Rein to constantly be there for Shulk no matter what the future brings. Now that's what you call a BFF, and it's good to know he also has our back in a fight. Rein fundamentally acts as the tank of the team, having high defense and HP, with his playstyle being based around aggroing enemies and quite the number of AoE attacks. Plus he has a crap ton of arts at his disposal, a lot of which have additional after effects. From our experience, we found Rein to be great when taking on multiple enemies at once, and very useful when combining different arts together or performing chain attacks. And thanks to how many arts he has and how they function, he was one of the better AI partners and overall pretty reliable.
I wouldn't call Rein perfect though, as like Riki, I think his playstyle isn't terribly nuanced. There's definitely more to do with him since he has arts that combo into each other like his Bone Upper and Dive So Bot combo, but other than that, he's pretty much an art spammer. Plus, Dunban has a knack for doing his job better in a lot of scenarios. Still, we can't deny that the big guy is effective as both a character and a fighter, and I for one am happy to have along on this long journey. After all, you can't have a rainbow without Rein.
I was quoting from the game, damn it!
Dunban.
Oh shit, boys! We got a badass in the house now!
I'm really starting to regret this collab.
Oi!
But the man has a point, because holy hell is this guy one hell of a badass. Without a doubt one of the coolest and most charismatic Homs to live on the Bionis, Dunban is the man everyone looks up to and wants to be.
I'm not surprised. We both thought he was one of the best characters and party members right from the get-go. Though, while he does leave a good first impression, it can be argued that Dunban doesn't really grow or become anything more than what we first see of him. However, there's no denying just how awesome he is, and there's a reason why many players don't bother to switch him out once they get a hold of him.
Dunban, funny enough, is actually the first member of the gang featured in Xenoblade Chronicles during the war at Sword Valley. Here we see his skills with the Monado firsthand and all that he went through up until present day, so right off the bat he's got a strong backstory, as well as cementing his coolness factor as off the charts.
As a character, I'd say that Dunban is comparable to Ike's portrayal in Radiant Dawn. On the one hand, yeah, I'll admit it's a little annoying that he seems to know the exact right thing to say and do in every situation, and it can certainly make him a little hard to relate to. However, I wouldn't dare call him a bad character. He's not like, say, Kirito, where he's completely devoid of personality traits and any challenges he goes through are just engineered to give him a chance to show off his OPness. Rather, Dunban retains genuine thoughts, feelings, insecurities, and fears of his own that he has to deal with. Because of his age, how he acts, and what he's been through, we feel that Dunban has earned the right to be a badass and show everyone up, instead of just being awesome because he's the main character, or a bad fanfiction writer's power fantasy.
Getting a bit cynical there, don't you think? Granted, I completely agree with you. This also means that he doesn't develop much throughout the story unlike everyone else, but to his credit, his backstory and behaviour are strong enough as is, and it doesn't change the fact that he still has demons he must conquer, but ultimately he's a great guy, especially once he gets to show off his swordsmanship. Like Ryan, Dunban is a purely physical fighter with an emphasis on attack, as his arts deal a lot of damage and can be devastating if chained together, making him a brilliant DPS character, and for us he was able to end battles within seconds, even against some very powerful enemies, as he excelled in one-on-one fights.
Compared to Ryan, Dunban has far less HP and defense, but his agility, and by extension his hit and dodge rate, is crazy high. Because of this, I'd argue he's a bit more of an efficient tank than Ryan in a lot of scenarios, since he'll require a lot less healing, and he won't lose aggro since he won't be taking damage as much. By far my favorite thing about Dunban, though, is his move pool. He has access to a wide range of attacking arts, and some very useful auras, my personal favorite being Peerless, allowing him to deal hefty damage, topple enemies, boost team members, and so on, making him no less than a one-man army. Though because he's not as sturdy as Ryan, I wouldn't advise going up against a large group of enemies, since his agility can't save him from everything, and that's when his fragility really begins to bite him in the ass.
In just about any medium, being the baddest of the team is going to gain you quite a bit of popularity, and Dunban has no shortage of that, starting out as a very strong character and an even stronger fighter, that while not progressing into anything more extensive, is no doubt impressive to say the least.
Well, at least now we know why he's a cameo in Smash Bros. And not a playable character.
Why is that?
Because he would have gotten banned from competitive play. Eh? Get it?
Consider that your punishment for the evening.
Fuck you!
Fiora. And here's where we start entering spoiler territory, since Fiora plays a huge part in Xenoblade's narrative, and is in our eyes one of the most complex and audacious characters in the game that we became ever so attached to.
Fiora is my personal favorite character in Xenoblade Chronicles. Granted, I do like Ryan a little bit more in terms of writing, and our number one pick is slightly better on the battlefield, but for me, Fiora has everything I love and admire in a character. She's incredibly likable, she's great in combat, I love her design, she pretty much has it all.
I think we found Zane's Xenoblade waifu.
Indeed, and she's better than your Xenoblade waifu.
You were saying?
I really fucking hate the internet sometimes.
Fiora has arguably the most crucial role in Xenoblade Chronicles, as from the beginning her relationship with Ryan and Shulk along with her subsequent death is what motivates them to seek out and destroy Metal Face and the Mechon. However, her reappearance in the story challenges Shulk's initial motives and brings about the truth behind the events that have taken place thus far.
Normally, I follow a philosophy that if you kill a character off, you should have them stay dead. But when Fiora died, I was quite glad when she came back. One of the big reasons why I like Fiora so much is that despite her becoming a half Mechon and essentially having her life turned upside down, she didn't transform into a complete stick-in-the-mud who mopes around, which would have been the easy thing to do. Rather, she tries to remain strong and keep fighting so that she can help her friends throughout the adventure. She still retains her humor and wit, even when her life force was starting to drain away. And having that kind of strength, despite seemingly impossible odds, is the sort of thing I love to see in any character.
Fiora is portrayed to be an incredibly optimistic and sweet person that has such lovely interactions with Shulk and the gang, and in spite of getting put through easily the most hardship and strife, she's always thinking positively and doing what is needed rather than what she wants, even if it causes her suffering, demonstrating that in spite of how hard life gets, Fiora stays true to herself and embraces her situation rather than fighting against it, making her just so delightful and inspiring to us. Plus, her reunion with Shulk was definitely the most heartwarming moment in the game. Aww, they're such a cute couple, even more so when kicking all kinds of ass together.
Fiora has a lot of properties that make her a beast of a party member. For starters, she can deal damage to Mechon enemies without needing a Monado enchant, making her incredibly useful for the last third of the game. That's already pretty great, but her move pool makes it even better. Fiora has a number of strong physical attacks like Double Blade, Double Wind, Spear Break, and Air Fang, along with solid ether moves like Power Drain. She also has my favorite aura art of the entire game, Speed Shift, which despite kneecapping her defense, gives her a massive boost to her auto attack speed and cranks up her double attack rate, meaning that her auto attacks will start going off like crazy. All of this combined gives her fantastic damage per second, along with making her very self-sufficient and the ideal party member for the endgame, so we highly recommend using her the second she becomes available.
As much as we've been gushing over Fiora for these past 2 minutes, I have one small personal gripe with her. In this case, it's how little she's featured throughout the game. Now that's not to say she doesn't get enough screen time, it's just that up until her reintroduction, the story allowed me to really get to know and understand each and every one of my team, whereas Fiora joins at the point where the plot is moving at 100 miles an hour, which I felt wasn't sufficient enough time to really get to know her like everyone else, but then again, that's just me.
Despite that minor nitpick, I feel Fiora is magnificent, and personifies some of the best traits in Xenoblade Chronicles, like how no matter how bad things get, or what cruel twists of fate life throws at you, you always have to remember to keep smiling and do the best with what you can, which is why Fiora is my favorite character in the whole game. But it seems to me that we still have one person left to discuss.
Shulk. Oh man, am I really feeling this one. If you were to ask me for an example of everything wonderful about Xenoblade Chronicles, well, I can think of hundreds, and the heir to the Monado, Shulk, is at the center of it all, being to me the most well-developed, complex, relatable, and my all-around favorite character in the game to both play as and experience evolve.
Though that's not to say he's the absolute best at everything. After all, the former entries have many strengths that not even Shulk can boast, and personally I'm a much bigger fan of Fiora, as we've said before. But when looking at the big picture, we consider Shulk to be the best of the best. Though if it were up to me, Fiora would be number 1, not this Monado boy, but unfortunately I am not the one making this video.
Monolith Studios' magnum opus makes it abundantly clear that Shulk is truly something special, and not just because he's the main character, I think. Being quite the talented researcher enables to both wield and unlock the powers of the legendary Monado, granting him the ability to kick all kinds of mechanic ass and regularly receive visions of the future, many of which Shulk must strive to change in order to prevent catastrophe.
In regards to his character, Shulk kinda suffers from the same problems I had with Melia, where his baseline personality isn't terribly interesting to me. He starts off as just kind of a standard nice guy with an interest in machinery and weapons development. However, like Melia, he does go through some fantastic development throughout the story, and I think it really helps make him a much more interesting character. Initially, the result of having lost a loved one drives him to seek revenge against those he believes are to blame. Yet, as the story unfolds and he starts to see the entire picture, his worldviews are constantly challenged, and he begins to wonder what his correct path in life is.
Due to these dilemmas, Shulk is a continually evolving character, as his motivations, morals, emotions, and ideals incessantly transform over the course of the narrative and show his natural progression into a hero without shying away from his more human components, as to me, he felt like the most down-to-earth and relatable person in the game. Though at the same time, this also meant that he didn't have very standout characteristics or personality traits, especially in comparison to those who fight beside him. Though to Shulk's credit, when looking at the majority of JRPG and anime protagonists, I'd say he has Reinhardt levels of charisma, and by the end you really feel how much stronger he has become since the beginning, and I mean you are really feeling it.
Okay, how come you get to make a bad pun but I don't?
Oh, I'm sorry. Would you like to spend hours every day editing these videos and going through gigabytes worth of footage just to find that few seconds of film to match with everything you're saying?
I'm good. Anyway, back to the Monado boy. In terms of battle properties, Shulk is interesting. He's built like a glass cannon, having high strength but low HP and defenses, and his arts are designed around him striking enemies from specific directions. Nonetheless, he's not just confined to dealing damage, as despite having a very limited move pool, no, really, these 8 arts are the only ones he learns naturally. The moves themselves are actually quite varied, from having strong straightforward attacks, stat debuffs, HP recovery, affecting his talent gauge, etc. This is a decent set of skills to be sure, but it isn't anything special. But thankfully, Shulk has another trick up his sleeve. The almighty Monado.
The Monado, or Monado Arts to be specific, are a set of special abilities that can drastically affect party members and the flow of battle. In some cases they are essential to beating certain enemies and bosses, though 1 or 2 of them we felt were the very definition of one-time use. Thanks to these, Shulk became all the more viable and could effortlessly negate a lot of vision attacks, making it so that he can take on just about any enemy no problem, with his AI being not too bad either, so whether I was in control or he was there for support, Shulk never once let me down.
I guess you could say he doesn't shulk his responsibilities, eh?
Okay, that does it!
Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.
Ever since its release, Xenoblade Chronicles has become one of the most beloved and all-around greatest RPGs ever made, and both Zane and I agree that the characters play a big part in regards to all that splendor.
Each of these characters are extraordinary and exciting individuals that help contribute to the narrative of this game, fighting against what seems like impossible odds, all the while being filled with so much charm and humanity that allowed them to make a connection with those fortunate enough to play this game. And we were very fortunate to have the pleasure of getting to know Shulk.
Is he the best character of all time? No. Are some of the cast more enjoyable than him? Yes. Can he solo the game by himself? I'll get back to you on that, but the way in which all of his strengths come together to not only give his character a strong sense of likability and relatability, but also overshadow and make up for his flaws is a testament to how astounding this game is, and why Shulk is the one fit to wield the legendary Monado, which is why he takes the #1 spot as our favourite character from Xenoblade Chronicles. This has been Blazing Knight. I wish you all a great night, take care, and thanks to games like Xenoblade Chronicles showing me just how marvellous RPGs can be, I've seriously begun to appreciate just what this genre has to offer, and out of everything this game does so well, the characters were without a doubt the greatest part of this magnificent masterpiece. Thank you all for watching today, I hope you had a great time and enjoyed the video. I just want to say a huge thank you to Zane for helping out with this video and everything else he's done for the channel. It was wonderful to work with you, dude, despite those awful puns, and I look forward to having you on board again in the future.
Always happy to help out, Lewis. If the rest of you enjoyed me in this video, then feel free to check out my YouTube channel, where I sometimes post music I've composed, and maybe do a few other things too. Or, in lieu of that, or rather I should say, in lieu-is of that, you can always follow one or both of us on Twitter, or follow Lewis on Amino.
If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to click that like button and consider subscribing as well. And of course I want to say a huge thank you to all my patrons who make these videos possible and help to support the channel. And shoutouts go to Chaos Saberlai, Justin Konovich, Samuel Line, Nate Perkins, Midnight Castle, Patanko Fan 32, Tivis James Little 4, Almond, Vinton Clark, Jeremy Redinger, The Main Idea, Perfect Oblivion, Maggie Fall, Feralin Ape 392, and Michael Rash. Thank you all so much for your continued love and support, and if you would like to go the extra mile and help out the channel as well, please consider supporting my Patreon, where you can get some exclusive bonuses just for you, which I hope will be worth your much appreciated investment. Anyway, that's it from me, I'll see you all next time.